Hey friends, happy Tuesday, the 29th of March. I'm Father Bill Hill, one of the priests at Holy Spirit Catholic Community. It's nice to take a moment and pray with you using a little bit of technology. I'll give you a daily reflection on the readings. The readings are linked on the sidebar. Click the link, read the readings prayerfully, and spend some time with God before you move on to other things. Members of Holy Spirit, if you've not yet done the Disciple Maker Index, I certainly invite you to spend about 15 minutes, give data to us as we try to, move us forward with different sorts of programs and options and ways of formation. Second thing is we will have a communal celebration of the Sacrament of Penance, sometimes still called Confession, next Tuesday night, April 5th, 6 p.m., Our Lady of Sorrows Church. Priests that speak English and Spanish will be available. So we'd love to join with you and to pray God's forgiveness as a people. I gave an explanation yesterday that we've kind of switched gears in the lectionary. Now we're hitting a lot of John's Gospel, and the first reading is going to be tied to that. So if you didn't catch that, feel free to watch yesterday's reflection. All right, let me get into it. We've got Ezekiel and we've got John. Let's just take a moment and remember the context of Ezekiel, because this is a powerful reading, I think, the first reading. But I think when we understand the context, it's even more powerful. Ezekiel was a prophet of exile. And so remember the destruction of Jerusalem, roughly around 587 BC. And it would have been horrific. There would have been the siege engines of Babylon, and then, the people would have been starving and dying of thirst inside the city, eating dogs and cats and rats and pigeons and even babies and terrible things like that. All of the awful things that siege warfare would do. And then once the walls were breached, rape and pillage and murder and looting, and then the torturing of many of the leadership, and the king himself watched his sons executed before him, before his eyes were gouged out, and he was hauled off to Babylon in chains. And so then the people who are expecting, the blessings of God to be on the land and to be able to worship God at the temple and all that stuff, utterly disrupted. The leadership of the people, all of the political leaders, the military leaders, the intelligentsia, the artisans, everybody carted off to Babylon, 500 miles to the east. And they're there as a defeated people with no rights, in a dominant culture where they're trying to hold on to their identity as a people. They don't have land, they don't have a temple. It's really, you can imagine, I don't know that we can. I don't know that we can imagine just how disruptive and traumatic that might have been. The scholars among them would have known that 200 years before, the northern kingdom of Israel had gone off into the Assyrian Empire in exile and had never come back, had never been seen or heard from again. Would that happen to them as well? What's the future going to hold? Has God forgotten us forever? Have the promises of the covenant been made void because we turned away from the Lord? All of those questions would be on the heart of the people. And then Ezekiel speaks. And he says, the temple will be rebuilt. And Ezekiel, who had never seen the temple in the flesh, then gives these beautiful images of the temple. And this one from the first reading is one of them. And the other thing is, Jerusalem itself was on a height so that it would be easily defensible. And if we've spent any time in the mountains, we know that, when you have high places, that's not where the water is. The water is in the low places. And so water on the mountain fastness of Zion was always a challenge, and it required development. And so here Ezekiel is talking about a miraculous trickle of water coming off of the east side of the temple at the height. And then it becomes, over a period, this huge river that you can't even wade across. You have to swim across it, some huge river. The Jordan River, when I saw it, in Jordan, not far from the Dead Sea, is, it's what we would call a larger creek, but it definitely is not a river in a lot of senses. This is the highlands. And so this image that Ezekiel has of this huge river is superabundance of our God. And then again, pay attention. What are the trees on the side? They're trees for healing and trees of abundance and fruit trees. And they don't just give their fruit, for a couple weeks once a year when you love it, and then you don't get anything sweet or any fruit for the rest of the year. Instead, you can eat fruit. You can eat sweet things, delightful things every month, all the time. And it's this image of the goodness of God. So there might be plenty to pray into and to dream about, to long for, to yearn for in the power of God, to allow God to use our imagination to imagine what indeed might be as God continues to renew all things. Oftentimes this is paired with the piercing of the side of Jesus. Jesus who says, destroy this temple and in 3 days it will be raised again. And so the devotional history of the church sees that blood and water that comes from the side of the church as the fulfillment of this prophecy. That's not where we're at today in the readings, but if you want to pray with that, you're welcome to. Here we have Jesus bringing healing to a man and the image of water in the pools of, what is it? Bethesda, right? There's another word that's Bethsaida, but this is Bethesda. And this person who's been ill for 38 years is so focused on the water that he loses sight of the healing waters of Christ that are right in front of him. And so Jesus is able to speak to him of healing. Jesus fulfilling that prophecy of the trees that bring forth the leaves that are healing. And the healing balm is in his word. So we might image here water, and water washing us clean, and water bringing healing in the waters of baptism, and the goodness of God in the waters, especially in high deserts at this time of year as we start to dream of spring, but also to imagine everything else that God is doing with water and bringing healing and wholeness. One more thing I forgot, right? Don't forget the Dead Sea, and then I'll wrap this up. But when we travel to Israel, we go and we float in the Dead Sea, and our bodies are incredibly buoyant because of the amount of salt that's in the water. And we can buy, Dead Sea, cosmetic and lotion supplies because of the amount of salt in that water. In Ezekiel's prophecy, the power of the water coming from the temple is so transformative, converting, that it changes that into fresh, clean water that allows for all of the animals, all the creatures to rejoice in that water. That's the power that we're talking about. So enough of me. I've rambled on plenty about these readings. Now, go to those sources of life and power. Read the readings prayerfully. Turn off your screen. Spend some time with God. All right, friends. Happy Tuesday. God bless you.